If you enjoy the Famicom, I'm sure you noticed that during gameplay, sprites tend to flicker when there's a lot happening on the screen at once. It could oftentimes be very distracting, not to mention difficult to tell what the heck is going on. This has to do with the limitations of the Famicom/NES's PPU, or Picture Processing Unit, only allowing 8 sprites on any given line at a time. So when there are more than 8 sprites on a line, things begin to flicker. Here are just some examples to jog your memory. In order to work around the limitation, game developers had to add in this flicker, so when it was necessary to have more than 8 sprites on a given line, sprites would take turns alternating, thus causing this flicker. These are just the facts we have to live with as a Famicom/NES lover. Until now. That's right, there is now a mod available that will stop the flicker of sprites past the Famicom's limits and up it to a whopping 15 sprites per line. Behold, the RGB2C02N by NX Labs. Don't you just love the way it rolls off the tongue so effortlessly? In today's video, I will be installing the RGB2C02N on this AV Famicom. I've done a few RGB mods on the new Famicom before, but this will be the first time for me to check out this RGB2C02N. It's got me really excited. So without further ado, let's get scruffy looking. The RGB2C02N has a couple of interesting prospects going for it. First, it adds RGB, giving you glorious crisp RGB output. Second, it has what is referred to as SPEX mode, which can run the PPU at the normal 15 kHz or be switched into high gear and run at 31 kHz, reducing the flicker. One other good point about this is that there is a few color palettes that you can choose from that are programmable. The current confirmed supported consoles are the red and white Famicom, versions HVC CPU 07 and HVC CPU GPM01. The new Famicom, HVCN CPU 01 and HVCN PPU 02. Or the twin Famicom AN500B, or the AN505B. And of course the NES top loader, NESN CPU 01. I've chosen to mod a new or AV Famicom with the RGB2C02N because it seems to be the easiest to mod and the most straightforward. So let's get scruffy looking. So we're just going to turn this one over, and there are 4 screws to take out. Okay, so we have the top off, and we can kind of examine what's going on the inside here. Today we're going to take off the PPU, the Picture Processing Unit, and we're going to add our RGB. So let's jump into that. So we're just going to start taking off these screws.
SN74LS373N is suggested to be replaced with this S774HC373N, especially if you have a twin Famicom. This is not a twin Famicom, but I don't know, we'll replace it and see what happens, I guess. Just want to show you my desoldering gun, which is absolutely necessary if you're going to be doing any kind of RGB mod where you've got to desolder 40-pin IC chips. This is a Goot TP100. I highly suggest it. I've been using it for a good 6 years or more, ever since I got into this hobby, and it's been serving me really well. So if you want one, I do earn from Amazon, so you'll be helping me out if you choose one from my description down below. If you need one, please, by all means, and you want to help out the channel, click on my Amazon link and buy one from there. It's a really good desoldering gun. I really do enjoy it. I hope it serves you well too. As we get the gun nice and warmed up, comes with one of these here. Always check to see if the tip is clogged or not. Okay, it is nice and clear. That's a good sign. We're removing the PPU here, the top one. We're gonna hope it goes smoothly here.
We have the PPU mostly desoldered. Now we switch our attention to the LS373N. Capacitor 5 needs to be laid down to make room for the RGB2C02N board. Oftentimes, when removing the PPU or any IC chip, you get stubborn pins, so I like to test with tweezers and go over them again with the desoldering gun until they come free. You can also add solder to the joints again if necessary.
Okay, we just gotta move this guy out, and we've gotta lay him down on the board.
The mod instructions call for cutting the video trace, but I don't like to cut traces if I can help it, so I just chose to remove one leg of this resistor, which will basically do the same thing and give us the same results. We need to attach the dip socket here. Match the dip socket with the screen print on the board. The short end of the header gets soldered into the RGB2C02N, and the second socket goes over the top. I suggest adding the socket before soldering the headers to the board. Once things are soldered, we can line up the pins carefully and attach the RGB2C02N to the main board. This is the controller board for the Player 1 controller that enables in-game switching of the SPEX mode and color palettes. It requires some fine soldering, and you need to get the components in the right place. So I highly suggest a multimeter and a magnifying device of some kind. There's this really tiny diode here, and there is a polarity to it, and I had to remove it and put it back in. So in order to test the polarity, you have to stick your multimeter to diode mode, if you have a diode mode, this one here, and then the negative lead and the positive, if they're on the right side, they should show a voltage. And since it doesn't show a voltage, it means these are not on the right side. So this is not the negative side, and this is not the positive. So we got to switch those around. So this is the negative side here, and this is the positive side. And we know that because now it's showing a voltage of 0.3-ish. Per instructions, this should be the negative side. There's just no way to tell the negative side without testing it like this. Just no way. Unless you have a microscope and you can see stuff, but I could not see it at all. Even if I took a picture and zoomed in, couldn't tell. The resistors are also two different values. So the resistor 2, this resistor should be 1 kilo ohm, and that was resistor 2, and then resistor 1 should be 10 kilo ohms. And I also had to switch these out. There it is, it's 10. This is the capacitor. Anyways, here's another diode. Alright, that's cool. So we've tested all the resistors are in the right place, the diodes are in the right spot. This diode has 3 connections, so it can only go one way. And this doesn't have a polarity, I don't think, this capacitor. But we look good. Now we can install our ATtiny to control the board. This is the EEPROM that has a couple of RGB palettes loaded onto it, and can be programmed with custom palettes of your liking. Here, I have incorrectly wired up the multi-out. I mistakenly tried to wire it up like I do for the Tim Worthington RGB board. The way you wire this is a little different. The RGB2C02N requires only 5 wires, R, G, B, sync, and ground, and that's it. Here's the corrected way to wire to the multi-out.
In order to get this connected to here, it's suggested to get one of these L clips here so that you can remove it and put it back in. This is actually a 5-pin header, so I snipped off one edge so that it would fit 4, and it will just go in like this. And then we'll be able to connect them here like this, or if you want to put another connector on here, you can remove it. So I think that's what I'm going to do.
Note, I also clipped the protruding bottom row of 3 pins on the straight side and the L-shaped side. They're in the way and unnecessary. The mode side is the only one we need both pins intact. Wiring the Player 1 controller board to the motherboard. I added connections to make this removable, but there is a clock, latch, data, 5 volts, ground, and an extension pin 13 that I wired like so. I've even gone ahead and added some connectors so that we can remove this board here if we ever choose to. So these are for the color palettes, and this is for controlling the SPEX function of the controller, 15 megahertz to 31 megahertz. So apparently you can change your color palettes using this, reprogramming it and so forth. It has 4 color palettes on it already. I've also added a little a jumper here for LED. So I will show you that in a minute. This goes to the LED right here. I've just taped up for the moment. There is the red light that will shine through so you can see. So we should be able to hold down Select, A, and the down direction on the D-pad to turn on the SPEX mode, giving us a PPU speed of 31 kilohertz and getting rid of the flicker. And look at that, she works like a charm. Additionally, the color palettes can be changed by holding Select, B, and up on the D-pad. There are 4, including black and white. As I mentioned before, you can also add your own to the EEPROM. I picked up this mod from Kada no Ken's at Akihabara's radio department store. They sell out pretty quickly, but he does get in new shipments about once a month. It's going for about 17,000 yen, or about 120 US dollars. The pros include crispy RGB output, almost doubling your sprite performance, 3 selectable color palettes, in-game controller switching functions for SPX mode and color palettes, programmable color palettes, so you can choose your favorite color palettes if you wish to do so. The cons. There is no S-Video, composite, or YPB PR, only pure RGB. Only supported by NTSC and no plans for PAL support. Advanced soldering skills are necessary. Compatibility has not yet been confirmed on North American toaster NESs. There's no English support for this mod either. When using this on an LCD display, I tended to get a kind of warped or strange artifacts at the bottom and the top of the screen. Overall, I believe that this is a great mod that adds great new performance improvements on the Famicom, and it really enhances the gameplay, not to mention beautiful RGB pixels. What do you all think? Is this a mod you'd be interested in picking up? Do you own one? Or have any questions about it? Let me know about it down in the comments. If you like the video and you want to help out the channel, you can become a channel member and get behind the scenes looks at future videos, among other perks. I also earn from qualifying purchases on Amazon, so if you happen to buy one of the tools I use from this link in the description below, you'll also be helping out the channel. Otherwise, please like and subscribe for future retro game modding and hunting videos from here in Japan. Big shout out and thanks to the current members for your continued support. It is much appreciated. Thanks everyone. Hope you all are staying safe, but remember, stay scruffy looking.
Who's scruffy looking?
Okay.